Alright, so Microsoft just had a pretty interesting event. Normally, I would choose to skip over these types of things, but because they unveiled the Microsoft Surface Duo and Surface Neo, I have a lot of thoughts that I wanted to get out there, and I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions, so I think this is worth discussing. But before that, we should probably talk about all the stuff brought up at the event, so I'm just gonna kind of get through that as quickly as possible so that we can get to the main attraction, I think, of the show. Anywho, let's begin. Okay, so first of all, there's a new Surface laptop, the Surface Laptop 3, which has updated performance on the inside. There's now a 15-inch version, there's new finishes and that kind of thing. There's updated Ryzen chips for the 15-inch model. It starts out at $1,000, and if you like laptops and you like Windows 10, it'll probably be a decent option out there for people just looking to get work done on premium hardware. They also unveiled the Surface Pro 7, which still kind of confuses me. It starts at $750, and MKBHD in his recap video even brought up that it has a worse battery life than the Surface Pro 6 in exchange for fast charging, which now both the Surface Laptop 3 and the Surface Pro 7 have USB-C. Previously they didn't have that before, which I thought they were pretty late on, but now they have USB-C, just one port, which I wish they kind of had more, or maybe Thunderbolt 3 or something like that would have been nice, but either way, they have USB-C now, and the Surface Pro 7 still starts with 4 gigabytes of RAM, which with a Windows 10 device has me a little concerned that they're still shipping them with 4 gigs of RAM at a $750 price point, but that product isn't for me. They added USB-C to it, so I guess cool. They're finally catching up with everybody else. And they also unveiled the Surface Pro X, which is this next generation Surface Pro device, basically the Surface Pro Pro, if you will. It starts at $1,000, it has thinner bezels, and it's ARM based with their own custom chip they worked with Qualcomm on, so battery efficiency is supposed to be a lot better. It's a very, very thin device at 5.3 millimeters, so jerry-rig everything. I'm excited to see your bend test, and instead of having a pen that docks onto the side, they now have it clip into this little keyboard mechanism that has you just, fold down the keyboard and you can pull the pen out and use it that way. It looks kind of odd. It's kind of a flat, wide pen, not the kind of thing I would want to draw on, but the major drawback I think all of these Surface devices have compared to the iPad Pro is the 120 Hz ProMotion display and that super low latency we get with iPad OS. If you like Surface devices and you like Windows, you know you're going to like these devices. I'm not here to argue about that today. There are people who are going to prefer iPad OS and the iPad hardware. We can bicker about that endlessly. So the important thing is there's fast charging. The Surface Pro X has 2 USB-C ports, has an ARM based CPU. It starts at $1,000, and it will probably be a compelling option for people out there. And before we get into the Surface Neo and the Surface Duo, I think it's important to mention some of the things they didn't update today. There was no update to the Surface Book, there was no update to the Surface Studio, and there was no update to the Surface Go. So there's still a good amount of the lineup that hasn't had much changes, but Microsoft today was more focused on what they're adding to their lineup, not so much improving their pre-existing lineup. So starting out with the Surface Neo, at first glance, a lot of people would look at this thing and say Microsoft made a foldable. I don't really think it counts though, because as you can see, this does not use, a plastic foldable OLED display on the inside like lots of foldables we talk about are. This is by all means a dual display device, okay? There's a very noticeable seam down the middle. It's using glass on the inside, which is a good sign, and it kind of just looks like 2 iPads duct taped together, and their plan here is for you to literally have like a Surface Book. You can hold it partially unfolded, all the way unfolded. You can kind of convert it into a laptop type experience. However, both displays are about 9 inches, so even when you use this little keyboard accessory to fold it up onto the bottom display, it's a pretty small laptop, it's a pretty small keyboard, and it's going to utilize part of that bottom display as kind of a secondary one, and they're redesigning Windows even and making Windows 10 X just designated for devices that want to have dual displays. Like there have been some Asus laptops with big display panels on the bottom, right above that keyboard where you can put stuff down there and have customizable controls and watch movies and whatever you want to do with that dual display on a laptop. Except there's a lot of questions I still have for the Surface Neo. As cool as it is and as thin as it is, we still don't know how much it's going to cost, which in my opinion is kind of the last piece of the puzzle, and they said it's not coming out until holiday of 2020, which when companies are referencing release dates as holiday, it usually means they don't really want to put an exact date on it because there's a lot of it they're not sure about yet. And before y'all cry innovation about dual displays, this isn't an entirely new thing. I mean, there's phones like the ZTE, Exum we saw in the past that have like dual displays where they're trying to showcase that you can do do multiple things at the same time, and this is just kind of bringing that to a laptop style experience. Asus has already messed around with dual displays, but still including the keyboard. But Microsoft didn't mention if this keyboard accessory that folds around the back that turns this thing into like a very technologically advanced Microsoft pamphlet. So many different folds to work with, but you put the keyboard up on top and type on this tiny laptop with big fat bezels on the side. And I get that it's cool. It's interesting that people want to have like a book-sized technology device that opens up with dual displays and put one thing on one screen and one thing on the other. I appreciate the fact that it's new, but I don't think I would use the word innovative as much as people want to, because I feel like at this point it's just, we want to find the new form factor, we want to find the new thing, so we're gonna just try out new things until one of them sticks. I don't think this is one of the things that's gonna stick, because I have a feeling that the technology involved in making hardware that can, you know, have a hinge down the center like that and multiple screens that you move between and switch apps over, as impressive as it is, I don't think most people are gonna buy into it over traditional laptops or traditional tablets, but a lot of that depends on where they price this thing. I could easily see it ending up being a $2,000 product with mediocre specs, in which case it's really only going to be good for people who want a small, compact laptop, but they also want it to have multiple screens so that they can multitask, but since the performance probably won't be top-notch, then I guess you're limited to Office apps, you know, doing Microsoft Word and PowerPoint and browsing the web, which is really all they had to demo it with. So they also have the stylus magnetically charging on the back, kind of like the last Galaxy Tab, and I'm not a fan of that either. I would rather have the pencil on the side, not on the back. Makes it more prone to being knocked off and stuff like that. There's so much we don't know that I'm just not completely sold on this being the future, but I'm okay with Microsoft experimenting and trying new things, unlike Samsung, who said, like, we're gonna ship this thing in a few weeks and we're ready for pre-orders and we're gonna start taking people's money. That's getting really, really premature. I think Microsoft is still being premature by unveiling a product that they say isn't going to be shipping for another year, potentially even more, because they just said holiday, but that kind of shows me that they're not too confident about it, and this gives the competition a lot of chances to one-up them as soon as this product is ready. Of course, they want to unveil it so that developers have time to optimize for it, but it's a dual display. How much are you really optimizing for? Definitely interesting, but I don't think we should be calling it a foldable, because devices that have hinges aren't really what we consider foldables. You know, a flip phone, a laptop, while they may technically fold, we don't really put them in the same category as the Galaxy Fold, where that display just keeps going and bends back and forth. And that brings us to the Surface Duo, which is the weirdest part. Microsoft getting back into the phone business. The Surface Duo runs Android. It's not running a version of Windows, and they even showcased it as a device that accepts phone calls. So on stage, they weren't really clear with how they wanted us to treat it. Like, they said, you may call it a phone, you may call it a tablet, you may call it a communications device, but it is all in all a Surface product. And we're like, yeah, we know it's a Surface product, but is this thing supposed to be a phone? What the heck is it? It's kind of in an interesting space, because while both of the screens on the inside are 5.6 inches, which is phone sized, when you combine the two, it kind of makes it a mini tablet, but again, there's that seam down the middle, so it's really more of a dual screen device like the ZTE phone we saw in the past that, you know, nobody bought into. It came out and everyone went, oh, okay, and then we all forgot about it. With this, they're partnering with Google to make their Windows apps and everything optimized onto an Android experience, but there's also no, like, rear-facing camera, which I find as a huge drawback to be comparing it to other smartphones. Like, there's no external screen like the Galaxy Fold, so it's not like you can use this thing with one hand. As soon as you take it out of your pocket, and it does look like kind of an odd, bizarre shape, you have to open it, and it doesn't appear to be the type of device you can open with one hand. And while they had some interesting demos for it, like being able to type on one screen and look on the other and play games and have your controls on the bottom screen, kind of like a over-glorified Nintendo DS, I can't help but think the Surface Duo doesn't really know what it wants to be. It's pretending to be a phone, but at the same time saying, I'm not a phone because I do all of these other things. At this point, I don't really see that much of a biometric, like there's no fingerprint reader, and they didn't really talk about face unlock. I assume it just has Windows Hello on the inside, but again, that's something you have to open the device every time you want to use it, and once you've opened the device all the way, you have to completely flip it around 360 degrees to get, you know, it into one-handed mode. It's just kind of a lot of weird approaches at once. And once again, they said this is shipping in holiday of next year, which means they're not too confident about a release date and definitely not confident about a price point. So knowing that, I don't think this thing is going to be the next generation of smartphones. I think this is going to be another weird chapter in Microsoft's history of like, oh yeah, remember when that happened? Because we know when you fold the device backwards and you're holding glass on either side, it's not going to be very durable. And we also know this thing probably, with its hinge and everything, is not going to be water or dust resistant. And not having a rear-facing camera or wireless charging or anything like that, and only relying on a front-facing camera, is definitely excluding a huge demographic, as camera performance is a big important feature to a lot of people these days, that this thing is going to have quite the narrow demographic. Maybe a happy one. If you're excited for the Surface Duo and you definitely want to get it, you'll get the answer to that question next year and see if you still want it or what this thing is priced at. And I'm guessing with all this new technology and complicated hinges and dual displays and everything, it's probably not going to be that competitively priced, in which case I could see this thing being a flop. It's going to be a weird phase. It's going to be a weird gimmick for Microsoft for a while, but they seem very confident about it. I could be wrong about it. Maybe this is the next big thing, but I'm quite curious and I'm quite interested in the fact that Microsoft is ambitious enough to go back into the mobile phone department and give this another shot, and doing it by doing something no one else is doing, but that doesn't necessarily make it better. As in, the Surface Duo, which, phone or not, is going to be compared to the next generation iPhone, the iPhone 12. It's going to be compared to the Galaxy S11, the Galaxy Note 11, the Pixel 5. It's competing on a whole nother playing field that doesn't even exist yet because it's so far away from shipping, and it could be $1,000, it could be $2,000. We just have no idea right now. So, interesting and fascinating approach at new dual displays technologies, but I don't think this is it, Microsoft. I think most people are going to end up skipping on this one, and it's impressive and cool right now, but I bet you 12 months from now, people are going to lose interest in this thing, and by the time it's available, most are going to say, no thanks, I'm good. I will say the Surface Duo is not as stupid as the Galaxy Fold. I think that thing is more ridiculous and hypocritical. Microsoft, it's not something I want, but it's still ambitious, it's still interesting, and I give them props for being unique, but I don't think I would quite consider it innovative. That word gets thrown around a lot, especially at this Microsoft event. And oh yeah, they released AirPod competitors. Yeah, they look kind of weird. They got the big circular things that go in, and it's $250. I don't even think the case has wireless charging. At least they charge with USB-C, I guess. But yeah, those I don't think are going to be a big hit either. Maybe if they were cheaper than AirPods, but yeah, I don't see that being a big hit either. Galaxy Buds would be a much better competitor. But anyway, what do you guys think of all the Microsoft stuff they unveiled at today's keynote? Feel free to hit me up over on Twitter or join our Discord. We can talk more about it there. But yeah, very interesting keynote, kind of full of interesting little nuggets of surprises. And I'll definitely try out a Surface Duo or a Surface Neo when those are available. Interesting names too. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you guys in the next one.